Hello, I'm Dr. Harriet Fraad.
And I'm Professor Juliana Forlano here with our podcast, Capitalism Hits Home.
Capitalism Hits Home tries to show the overlapping and mutual shaping of capitalism with all aspects of our lives: race, culture, gender, all aspects.
We aim to educate, activate, and even alleviate some of the burdens we all experience living in a capitalist USA.
This program is brought to you by Democracy at Work.
Harriet, we have such a great topic today. It was your suggestion that we cover this. And, I really haven't heard people talking about the intersection of mass shootings with capitalism.
Yeah, well, I think that capitalism has an enormous amount to do with it because the United States is, if not the only, one of the most unadulteratedly capitalist systems in the world. And we outstrip all others in this one area, including, well, I guess we outstrip others in our weapons manufacture. But in mass shootings, America is not only the vanguard, it is the star performer.
We're number one, as they say.
Absolutely.
Not something to be proud of.
No. Over the past 50 years, America has had 300 mass shootings. And in the last month, we've had 45 mass shootings, which means more than one every day. No other nation in the world has had more than 18 mass shootings since 1966. So we are not only the vanguard, we are way, way out in front, which is something worth exploring because we have to look at what's going on here. The newspapers usually attribute mass shootings to some deranged individual, making it a personal matter. However, you're more likely to be killed by being struck by lightning than by a crazy person just killing you. So it isn't just a problem of mental illness. Let's look at it.
On one level, Harriet, I think it is kind of a problem of mental illness because capitalism drives people absolutely insane with what it does to you. And then people start acting out on how they have been brutalized by the system.
Our capitalism is unique in several ways. One way is that until 1970, America was the most egalitarian, the most equal country in the developed world. Now we're the least. Manhood was defined in terms of gender, was traditionally defined as the ability to support women and children. That wasn't true of minority communities, particularly for Black Americans, because jobs were withheld that could have provided a family wage. But until the 60s and the late 70s, the overwhelming number of Americans were white. And the expectation was that there are two markers of American manhood. One is the ability to support a woman and children. The other is, in addition to your job, that you have a woman attached to you who serves you, who loves you, who makes you her man. Now, those things are no longer available in the United States. The mass of union jobs were outsourced so that capitalists could make more money by sending those jobs, particularly manufacturing jobs, where blue-collar men could feel like a man and support their families. Those jobs were exported, outsourced to China, India, Bangladesh, millions of jobs many of which had been unionized and were getting decent wages. And that was done purely for the sake of profit. Other countries with strong socialist movements, which includes New Zealand, it includes all the Scandinavian countries, Sweden, Denmark, Norway, and the Netherlands, and also Germany and France, powerful labor movements and stopped that from happening because outsourcing was outlawed. It was a crime. In Sweden, if you want to close your factory, you have to find every single employee an equivalent job. So it's cheaper to retool and make something else than to get all those workers equivalent pay jobs. We don't have that. We don't have a political labor movement. The anti-communist crusade knocked out the active leftists that would have a culture of labor, as well as the socialists and the communists. And so we don't have that kind of union. We don't have the kind of union even like they have in France and most of the other nations, where no union official can get paid more than the highest paid worker in their unions, and there isn't an entrenched, wildly paid labor bureaucracy. And so our jobs were outsourced. And so was the family system that depended on them for white people, which was a dependent wife and children, and a wage-earning male was destroyed. Women had to work because men and women outside the home as well as within it, because men and women together with the kind of strict allocation of wealth up to the top and away from the middle and the bottom, two people have to work to make less than what one white male earned in terms of buying power. A statistics which just blows my mind to illustrate that is two people working full-time at minimum wage jobs can't afford a two-bedroom apartment in any state, city, or county in the United States. So we're talking about a phenomenon that's happened. And the family system, which was based on male support, white male support for families, is done. And the majority of divorces are now initiated by women. The majority of refusals of marriage are by women because gender norms have not changed sufficiently so that a lot of men, to bolster their flagging manhood in this flagging economy for them, want extra services from their wives: sexual services, emotional services, domestic labor, childcare. And a woman comes home from her job and doesn't want to do a second job taking care of a man.
Harriet, one of the things that women often did when the division of labor was more, when a man could go out and earn enough money to support a family and a woman didn't have to, just to do the supportive thing, whether she wanted to or not, that's a whole nother conversation, unrelated to mass shootings. But one of the things that women often did was connect with neighbors, be part of the fabric of socialization, of connection. And you also spoke about unions and how the union movement has been decimated in this country, and how unions are actually a place where people get together. They feel a sense of oneness. They feel a sense of unity of cause, even though maybe they're of different religions or political parties or even races, when, you could be racist but still be working toward the same goal as your people of other races. When we were talking about this topic, one of the things that you pointed out that I think was so important here is how capitalism splits people apart from each other. And one of the things that these men, mostly men, these mass shooters have in common is they're isolated. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yes, that is a perfect segue to another aspect of what's going on. All of the 300 mass shootings we've had in the past 50 years were perpetrated by men who were socially isolated, who were disconnected. America has become horribly isolated. And, for example, there are fewer people active in anything, like anything. I'm not just talking about political things. I'm talking about bowling leagues. I'm talking about soccer leagues. I'm talking about
Church.
PTAs and blood drives. But fewer Americans are connected with any group of
Well,
any
who has
kind.
time to do anything when you have to work 2 jobs
But
just to get food?
that's right. But that means that fewer Americans are in any community group of any kind than were in bowling leagues alone in
Oh,
1970. So
wow. First of
another
all, I had no idea that bowling was such a important part of our socialist structures here, but that is quite a
the
stunning
point
number,
is
Harriet.
the point is bowling wasn't that important, but people joined leagues of every sort. If you go to France and you spend some time there, you realize when people retire, they join the retirees community and the retirees organizations in whatever neighborhood they're in. They're in unions, they're in school groups, they're very active politically. So if somebody does something that they don't like, they're out there. They tried to cut the free childcare in France when we were there. Tens of
People
thousands
were
of
in the
people
street.
and their children were out in the street because there's a community. Americans don't have that. And they're very lonely. 1 in 4 Americans doesn't have anyone to talk to, even in the worst emergency. And these are the kinds of people who commit mass murders. Not that all the lonely people did, or else the country would have no population left. But it's a factor.
Yeah.
Capitalism breeds isolation. They
Mhm.
want you to go home after your job, if you're lucky enough to have one, and watch television by yourself and consume. The
Maybe
idea,
feed your kid so that once you can't work anymore, your kid could take your place on the assembly line.
or your kid can grab something. I've had clients like that. I said to this client of mine who was a teenager, well, tell me about the family dinner table. He said, huh? Dinner table? I said, well, how do you eat dinner? He said, everybody gets their own thing and goes to their own TV in their room, and eats it. Okay. Um, so that men
I want to
particularly,
take the TV and smash it. I'm sorry. The TV is just a tool of oppression in so many ways. Another episode, another conversation for another episode.
it is,
Anyway,
but nonetheless, Americans are the most isolated people, and men are more isolated. For example, in the studies done of what happens when a frightening thing happens, people say the natural response is fight or flight. No, they only tested men. The natural response for women is fear and connect with other people. And women are connectors. So even if there's a divorce, women are still connected to their children, connected to their relatives, connected to their women friends. Women talk more intimately when they first encounter each other in the ladies' room than men do in their whole lives. You can walk into the ladies' room at a restaurant and someone say, "Oh, do I look fat in this? My boyfriend thinks I look fat." And the other one would say, "No, you don't. I think you look really cute," or whatever. No man is going to say to his fellow in the men's room, standing there peeing, "You think my dick is too small? Do you think this shirt is too tight? My wife thinks the dick is too small and my shirt is too tight." No.
yes, I do think your dick is too small. You should buy this penis enhancement product I'm
Exactly.
selling here.
Exactly. And we
Counter
just
with
have
the cologne.
an a sales kit right here by
It's
my
like one of
ankle.
those guys with the coat.
Yeah,
Oh my goodness.
right.
We've
But
gone
in
off the
any case,
plantation.
women are the connectors. We connect men with their relatives, with friends, with children, and therefore we go mad a whole lot less frequently, and we shoot people a whole lot less frequently. Another capitalist problem here is that the NRA has masked itself, it has masqueraded as a nonprofit. And it's a clever thing on the part of the gun industry. They can't say, buy a gun, make us rich. It's a much smarter thing to say, be a man, buy a gun, protect your family, protect your property. There was an ad that was very big for the Bushmaster automatic rifle that Adam Lanza used to kill all those children. They did take it off the internet after Adam Lanza's massacre. However, the ad was for a Bushmaster automatic rifle, and it said, "Does your wife or girlfriend make more money than you? Revoke your man card. Does your do you prefer tofu to meat? Revoke your man card. Do you know how to find cilantro on the grocery list? Revoke your man card. It went down a whole list. Then it had a picture of
Cilantro.
a
Wow.
Bushmaster automatic rifle, and it said, Bushmaster automatic rifle. Reinstate your man card. In other words, you're a man. And as the Wall Street Journal first and then Mother Jones showed in this map, they made a map showing that the red states are also the states with the greatest male insecurity. They measured that in that they're the greatest
Ha.
purchasers of penis enhancements and testosterone creams. And I think those ads for men who have been unmanned by capitalist export of their more lucrative jobs makes buying guns reinstating people's manhood. And that's a particular problem in the United States. We do have more guns per person than anyone else, but Canada has loads of guns, but they don't kill one another. Finland, these are hunting states, hunting nations. They have loads of guns. They're not using them against each other. So it isn't just that the guns are there. It's that they're used to address loneliness and to address the absence of feeling manly. And
Well,
that's where gender and class and capitalism really are evident.
those two countries that you mentioned have very strong social safety nets. Just a
Yes, they do.
country's structure having a social safety net makes people feel like they're part of something. They're part of something where they care for each other and they will be cared for. And I think, the United States, we have Social Security, but it's a constant fight by the forces, of fascism to take it away, to ruin it, to destroy it, to chip away at it, to undermine it. And it's not just that we still have it that makes it good. It's the conversation around how it shouldn't be there and it should be this rugged individualism. And then when people go down the road toward rugged individualism, they wind up being these sort of lone gunmen, for lack of a better
That's right.
term.
And all those
One of the things
countries,
that the
sorry,
NR that one of the things that I was looking into when I was looking into this topic is the fact that the rhetoric around how to fix this problem is how do we keep guns out of people's hands. And groups, even like Everytown for Gun Safety, that was a big group that they're still out there. I support what they're doing generally speaking, but they're only working on a tiny sliver of the things that cause gun violence, which is access to the guns. The things that you've been talking about, Harriet, are way, more systemic that could be worked on to stop gun violence. And, the groups like Everytown, which I hate to criticize them because they are doing some good work, but they also, the fact that they're not interested in the role that, powerful institutional forces like poverty and militarism play in the gun crisis, that they just focus on the question of which types of guns and gun users, are they the mentally ill ones? What kinds of the high capacity ones? That's really an approach that pushes the agenda of expanding criminalization of certain people and certain groups and helps lead to policies like stop and frisk. And by the way, Bloomberg, he started stop and frisk, or at least he used it. I'm not sure if he was the person who
yeah,
started it, but at the same time, he is the one who funds Everytown for Gun Safety and was trying to use that as his platform for his recent run for office. It's really interesting that things like poverty and militarism don't play a role in
yeah.
trying to mitigate against these issues.
Well, one of the things that has happened, and we should mention because it ties, I think, so well together, the original mass murderer in 1966, the big mass murder, was a Viet vet who climbed a tower in Texas and shot 17 people dead. That if you are a country that solves its problems through invading other people, that also has an influence. And if the only job you can get, because there's an economic draft and you don't know what to do with yourself, is to join the army where you are killing people and worrying about being killed, that also doesn't help. But we don't have the feeling of being cared for because we're not. You know, all these other countries that have a lot of guns, whether they're in Switzerland where people have their guns in a safe because if they're called upon as their voluntary military, they take their gun, or Finland or Canada, those are the bigger gun possessors, they are cared for. They have Medicare for all. They have national health care and child care and after school care and elderly care. They are taken care of. And they have powerful labor unions and political parties that unite people. And they have a culture of labor sympathy, a culture of connection for all those people who have to work to make a living, who are not home living off their stocks and bonds.
You
And
know,
what has happened in America is after the United States exported all of these jobs, companies made a wild amount of money and then took it home in our pay-to-play system. By the way, a little aside, that's not allowed in these other countries. There's no money allowed, private money allowed in elections, and you are not allowed to campaign for more than, I think it's 2 weeks at a time, and you can't buy TV space and so on. But they came home in America's best democracy money can buy, bought our representatives, and people got discouraged and didn't even bother voting because they felt, what does it matter? So that their capitalism has really permeated our culture and the culture of sympathy for labor that makes the majority of the French support the yellow vests, even though they cause inconveniences, support the subway workers, even though the subway stations are closed when they're on strike, support each other. So if the gas workers are on strike, the electricity is also cut off, and so is mass transit. So they win because they have solidarity. And that's what Americans need, because that would connect these isolated, lonely men. Another thing is the psychology of narcissism, which is a very capitalist mental illness. In narcissism, you see only your own reflection. You don't see your impact on anyone else. Narcissism is based after the myth of Narcissus. Narcissus, who looked at his own image in the water and was so enamored with himself that he fell in and drowned. Well, if we look at the statements by the latest FedEx mass murderer, he wanted to be somebody. And he said, I'm going to die by cop, told his mother that. And he thought of, okay, I'll make a splash. He didn't think, well, what about all these people whose lives are destroyed? What about the people who counted on those people? What about their children? What about those who are wounded and no longer have an arm or a leg? Other people don't count. All that counts is yourself. And that is also a recipe for the most destructive behavior, because you don't see your impact on the people around you, which happens because you're disconnected. And that's a severe problem. So it's capitalism's narcissism, capitalism's export of strong union jobs, capitalism's decimation of the union movement through anti-communism, and capitalism's isolation of individuals, making everything about the individual. And when one of these men shoots a bunch of people, they look at, oh, what was wrong with him? They don't say, where did this wish come from? To be glorified through mass murder. They don't look and notice that the bus that passes has a picture of some guy saying, "Make my day," and shooting someone else.
Mhm.
Doesn't have a picture of a guy holding his baby and saying, "Oh, she smells so good." It's, of course, before she, or I want to change her.
Yes, or yes, yes,
Yes,
yes.
or tied
Oh,
for life.
Harriet, we are coming up on the end of our show here. And, I do want to say thank you to everyone who has contributed to our program, Capitalism Hits Home. We are, again, trying to remain fully self supporting. We're almost there. So thank you to everyone who has contributed. If you can contribute, we do ask that you go to our Patreon page, patreon.com/capitalism hits home, and make a recurring donation. That's how we know that the donation is for this particular show. Or if you don't want to make recurring and you want to make a one-time donation to Democracy at Work, go to Democracy at Work on the internets and find us there and make your contribution. We do thank everyone for making their contributions to this program. Here,
we also
well,
want to thank you for listening. And we understand not everyone is in a position to give a contribution. And we love you anyway, and we want you to join us.
exactly. Well said. We love you anyway, and we want you to join us. We also like hearing your feedback, so thank you for that. If you're new to the channel here, just subscribe and share us. If you can't support us financially, you can just share us with your friends. That helps, and it doesn't take a lot of cash to do that. But again, send us your feedback. You can email us. You can get us on the Twitter handle at Democracy at Work is Democracy at WRK. Work without the O. And special thanks to Brian Issam, Maria Camonella Mania, Liz Phillips, and the whole team at Democracy at Work for making this podcast possible. And thank you again to our listeners and supporters because you also make this possible.
Yes, thank you. This will be continued. Bye-bye for now.
Bye-bye.